What's the craziest bet you've ever made with your son? When my son was 15, he was absolutely obsessed with video games. Not just casual playing, he lived and breathed them. His favorite was this intense, fast-paced fighting game. He played it every day after school, online with friends or strangers, boasting about his ranking and how literally no one could beat him. He wasn't a bad kid, just cocky, especially when it came to that game. At the time, I was a single mom working 2 jobs, days at an office, nights at a diner. I barely had time to understand his hobbies, let alone get involved. But one night, after a particularly grueling double shift, I came home, kicked off my shoes, and heard him yelling into his headset about how he absolutely destroyed some poor kid in ranked mode. Something in me snapped. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was that familiar teenage smugness in his voice. But I walked into the living room and said without thinking, "Bet you couldn't beat me." He laughed so hard he actually rolled off the couch. "You? Mom, you don't even know the buttons." He wasn't wrong, I didn't. But I didn't let that stop me. We made a deal. If I could win just one round, just a single round against him after 1 month of practice, he'd take over all the household chores for 6 months. Dishes, laundry, trash, floors, all of it. If I lost completely, I'd buy him the overpriced gaming setup he'd been begging for, new monitor, chair, and a custom controller. He agreed instantly, probably thought it was the easiest win of his life. For the next 4 weeks, I trained in secret. I used my lunch breaks at the office to read online forums and watch YouTube videos of pro players. I'd sneak into the living room after he fell asleep and practice moves using an old spare controller. I even asked one of the cooks at the diner, who turned out to be a closet fighting game fanatic, to coach me on breaks. My thumbs were sore, and my coworkers thought I was having a breakdown. I hadn't been this focused on anything for myself in years. What my son didn't know was that back in the early 90s, I had a little bit of a reputation. I used to hang out at arcades after school and during weekends. I was one of the few girls competing in local tournaments. I still had muscle memory buried somewhere. I just had to dig it up. The night of the match finally came. My son set up the game on the big TV, still grinning like he was doing me a favor. He even picked what he thought was the fairest character for me, claiming it was the easiest one to learn. I said nothing. He started taunting me before the first round even began. "You ready to lose that paycheck, Mom?" I smiled and gripped the controller. The match began, and on the very first round, I executed a clean combo I'd practiced 100 times. He dropped the controller for half a second, eyes wide, mouth open. I won that round. Wait, what? He looked genuinely stunned. I lost the next few rounds. He was better, no question. But according to the bet, I didn't have to win the match. I just had to win a round. I reminded him of that. He tried to argue. "You must have used some cheap trick," he mumbled. That's when I pulled out my small, beat-up notebook filled with move lists and counters, and my phone with a screenshot of my old arcade ranking from a local tournament back in the day. "You've been hustling me," he shouted. I just smiled and pointed to the sink full of dishes. "Now he does chores," without complaint. Best bet I ever made.